GSMC Baseball Podcast, bringing you our fourth segment, which is going to be talking about the Chicago Cubs and their trade deadline approach. So let's get into it. The Cubs were a team I was very high on at the start of the year. Actually, no, I should reroute that sentence. The Cubs were a team I thought were very good at the start of the year. I really was never high on them going into the offseason and coming out of the offseason as well. I thought they were a good, solid team, but really nothing more than that. But really, at the start of the year, I thought that they were one of the best teams in the league, mainly because of a guy like Shota Imanaga, who turned out to be a fantastic signing. Was absolutely amazing with your team at the start, and still has been solid, but definitely has fallen back down just a little bit, which I think has definitely affected you guys. But overall, this Cubs team has been very interesting. They've been one of the best teams in the NL, come down to, not great, have now stayed in the middle, and are now consistently very mediocre for this year. I mean, if you're looking at the Cubs in a standing sense, you're looking at them, where are they in regards to the NL, regards to the NL Central, all that. I mean, currently in the NL Central, you see right now they are currently last place, only by a half game, and they're only 2.5 to third. So NL Central is very compacted, but I mean, they're last place in the NL Central. They're 38 and 44. You look at the wild card right now. The only teams they're above are the Marlins and the Rockies, which are yikes. I mean, that's not good when your only teams are above the Marlins and the Rockies. I just talked about how horrible those teams are. So definitely a lot to think about with the Cubs, and I think at one point it was just recognized that they would be buyers, but now we have to look at what is going to happen with them at the trade deadline, what is going to be their decision, and what should they do. So first question we have to ask is, should the Cubs be buyers, sellers, or do a hybrid, kind of both, kind of do a retool, whatever. So if I'm answering, to be perfectly honest, I would think the Cubs should probably be sellers at this point. I think there's a ton of talent on this team. I think your rotation is very good with guys like Jameson Taillon, Shota Imanaga, Javier Assad, Ben Brown. But, one thing you're noticing is, first of all, Ben Brown was just placed in the IL. Javier Assad was just placed in the IL. Imanaga has definitely regressed a little bit, so I think even one of their biggest strengths is becoming a little worse. You don't have a catcher at this point. I mean, Tomas Nido and Miguel Amaya is probably by far the worst catching situation in the entire league. Just that's a big problem. Your infield is good with guys like Cody Bellinger, Nico Horner, Dansby Swanson, Ian Happ. Ian Happ is all over, but sometimes played third base, sometimes plays outfield. But overall, I think that at this point, I don't think they're going to be competing this year with all those teams in the NL being last place in the NL Central. I just think that there's a lot of teams better than them, so that is why they're going to end up being sellers, and I think that is what's going to happen. Rosenthal, along with a few other athletic writers, published an article today talking about what the Cubs trade deadline approach might be, and he basically hinted towards them being sellers, and it'll be interesting to see if they are sellers, what they could sell. Now, first of all, you have to look at a guy like Cody Bellinger. Obviously, is signed to a little bit of a weird contract, 1 year, but can turn it to 3 if he's not that good, with the team option, the player option at the end. So really, it's a 1 year deal if he continues hitting like he is right now. And the thing about Bellinger is, he's really out of place with the Cubs right now. Obviously, he plays first base well, but at the same time, I just don't think he's a first baseman long term. I think a lot of his value comes from defense and playing in the outfield. And as much as he is a good hitter, he's just not as good of a hitter at first base as I think he is to be the starting first baseman on a team like the Cubs, who apparently wants to compete and all that. So yeah. So I think he'll definitely be on the move if they do end up trading. I mean, he'll probably opt out of his contract, so it's just a deadline run for a team. Now, he provides a lot of talent, of course, again, with his defense, with his speed. Of course, a nice lefty power bat. I mean, one team that always comes to mind is the Yankees. Of course, this might sound a little hypocritical because I just talked about how I don't think he's a first baseman, but if it's just for a deadline, I think the Yankees would make a lot of sense for him to be their first baseman. Of course, they need a first baseman badly. Bellinger's swing would work so well in Yankee Stadium. He's been rumored to there for a long, long time. Pretty sure he grew up a Yankees fan as well, so I think it would make a lot of sense there for Bellinger to end up coming to the Bronx. It would make a lot of sense. And overall, I think that Bellinger to the Yankees is a deal that would make a lot of sense for both sides. Yankees definitely have the prospects to get him. Cubs would get to retool a little bit and open up the path for a real first baseman to come in, maybe even swing a big trade for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in the offseason, as I talked about in my Cubs video as well. So overall, there are a lot of options with the Cubs team, but I think Bellinger is one guy you have to look at first. It's a guy that could potentially be on the move. After that, I think Jameson Taillon would be a really interesting thing. He does have 2.5 years left in his contract, but his contract is a little big for a starting pitcher. They have a lot of starting pitcher prospects coming through the ranks, and he might become just excess goods at that point. Maybe they don't think he's going to replicate the season he had, and they want to sell him high. With the lack of pitching, I do think Taillon could end up being a very interesting candidate. I think that is an option as well. So I think that would be something that is very interesting for the Cubs. But overall, the Cubs are at a very interesting crossroads here, with this team being very mediocre and just not being that great. But I don't know if it's bad enough to fully sell, so they could just trade a guy like Taillon, like Bellinger, maybe acquire someone else in a different trade that has a lot more control, will be a bigger part of your future. So overall, it'll be very interesting to see what the Cubs do end up doing at this trade deadline. And overall, I'm very excited to see what the decisions they make are going to be, and just what is going to happen with this team, and what they do decide to do. Again, I think it'll be interesting to figure out if they are going to end up being sellers, they're going to be buyers. I think right now they're probably leaning towards being sellers, just because this market doesn't have a lot of great players in it. I think with the Mets being as good as they have been right now, the market lost a lot of good players, because we've had guys like Luis Severino, JD Martinez, Sean Manaea on the trade deadline, on the trade block, but obviously not going to happen now. Pete Alonso as well. So I think the Cubs could really end up winning this trade deadline if they do end up shifting some pieces out. A lot of Cubs fans, I'd say most Cubs fans, really expected them to do very well this year, and the fact that they haven't, I think, may signal a change in Chicago with this core. There's still a lot of great players on this team, of course, like Nico Horner, like Dansby Swanson, like Pete Crow Armstrong, who is a young and upcoming prospect, of course, who I'm very high on, Ian Happ. So a ton of talent here for this Cubs team. It's just, what is your decision going to be making? Are you looking at the long term? Are you looking at this year? Do you think you can win this year? I just don't know how that would be possible looking at this team. So overall, the Cubs will be very interesting to watch, and just a very interesting team to end up seeing, and just watching and seeing what does happen with them this year. So it will be fun. I mean, you're looking at the NL Central right now. You have teams like the Reds, the Pirates, the Brewers. I said the Pirates already. One other team in the NL Central that I'm forgetting. I said the Reds. Reds, Pirates, Brewers, Cardinals. There we go. Left my mind. Those are 4 solid teams. Like, the Pirates have great pitching. Cardinals have a ton of talent. Brewers are leading the Central for a good amount of time. The Reds still have a ton of talent, even with injuries. So, going over at least 2 of those teams is a significant task. Going over a ton of teams in the wild card as well is a significant task. And I just don't know if the Cubs at this point are ready to compete. And I think it'll be interesting to see if they do sell at the deadline, what they do sell, what they could get back. I think getting someone back for Bellinger would be the big get. I mean, other than the Yankees, of course, there are other teams that could use him. I think the Phillies could use him as an outfielder. The Mariners could definitely use him as well. The Dodgers even could use a reunion with him, needing a center fielder. That would be very fun. But overall, it will be an interesting thing to see what is going to happen with the Cubs and their trade deadline approach this year, what the decision they make are going to be, and what is going to happen. Again, I think they're at a crossroads, their organization right now. It'll be interesting to see what they do in the offseason as well. I think they should have a good amount of money available, just not exactly sure. So overall, this Cubs team will be very, very interesting to watch. Team I'm really keeping close eyes on, and that is why I did want to talk about it here. Just their trade deadline approach and what is going to factor in with them this year. So yeah, we'll be moving into our 5th and final segment here, which is going to be talking about the Washington Nationals and James Wood calling up one of the top prospects in baseball. One of their top prospects, James Wood, ranks as the number 3 prospect in all of baseball according to most services. Number 3 for Pipeline, top 5 for most things. So yeah, an amazing prospect that I've talked about on the show before. So we'll talk about him, and we'll see you after the break. So thanks, and bye.